Those who practice Khechari Mudra, at least occasionally, start to feel that miracles happen to them. While on the path to self-realization, you notice the aging processes slow down. The body becomes youthful regardless of a person's age, or aging stops. I advise everyone to master it. But I also advise you not to hurry, because this requires a serious attitude. Yes, I want to talk about Khechari Mudra now. You can find plenty of information about it on the internet. If you want to cut the tongue tie, who can help you? Can you share contacts? No, I don't know who could help you. There is a traditional way of doing it. But some contemporary masters think that one should either cut it on their own or practice tongue stretching. It's you who decides. But sometimes it is necessary to cut the tongue tie to treat misaligned teeth and jaws. Some babies are born with a tongue tie that is very short and tight, thus causing difficulties with speech. It requires surgery in any case. I'm afraid to cut it with a sedge grass by myself. I don't know how to do it. So don't. If you want to cut it yourself, you should use special techniques. It's to cut millimeter by millimeter over a rather long time period. So it's best not to do it. Your task is to stretch your tongue as you can. I'd like you to understand. There are 3 types of Khechari. The basic maxim of Khechari, then the mid-level maxim that you follow now, and the key maxim that is thought of as complete or perfect. When you practice Khechari Mudra, the first thing you can do, there is a hump just behind the upper teeth that curves up into the mouth, thus forming the palate. If you press the tongue against this hump, the front and the mid-level channels will start to close up. This technique is used in Taoism. This is the first basic Khechari. And while you can't perform a true Khechari, you can still do something good for yourself, for your energy, for your life and health. Just form a habit of holding your tongue. Hold it behind the teeth. I always say that this is very convenient and very correct. Behind the front teeth, there is a hump that meets a kind of cavity. This is the point against which the tip of the tongue should be pressed. And the channel will start to nourish you. It is believed to be the life channel. When your tongue is too loose and you're just chatting away and there is no link, it's believed to be the death channel. When you give a pacifier to a baby, this is tapping into the death channel. In ancient times, there were no pacifiers, thank God, but there were pacifiers made of herbs and fabrics that retained conductivity. Rubber doesn't let energy flow. And you know who invented rubber and why it happened. Such children often get sick because their energies don't function as they should. They often spit the soother out, throw it away. Their parents force it into their mouth. They spit it out again and press their tongue against the upper gums. Have you seen babies sleeping? They roll their eyes back and their tongue touches the roof of the mouth. Have you ever seen this? It's natural. Those who have their babies take pacifiers raise up empty children, devoid of any energy. So you can start to hold your tongue behind the teeth right now while evolving to the second level of Khechari. At the second level of Khechari, you press the tip of the tongue against the palate. It doesn't yet reach the uvula, but touches the roof of the mouth. There are three so-called regions that are in charge of three elements. These are fire, water, and air. In this case, when you hold your tongue a bit farther there, you close up one of these regions to this or that degree, or all of them at the same time if you press your tongue firmly. It won't take much time to master, because anyone can reach there. When during practice you free your tongue, and I have shown you several exercises that are rather effective, complement them with, we did it yesterday, do you remember? Today, to be more exact. Be sure to complement them with Simha Mudra, when you get your tongue out and stretch it forward and downward towards the chin. Watch Hatha Yoga videos that show how it's done. Be sure to practice it. By the way, for you it's also very important to practice it. I'll explain now. After training your tongue by moving it back, to the right, to the left, to the center, forward, and so on, you can wrap your tongue with a bandage or a thin towel to avoid slipping and pull it forward slightly and very delicately, as if milking it. In this way, you'll gradually stretch it. Don't be afraid, but don't overdo it to avoid overstretching the muscle. It takes time. It can't be done in 2 to 3 days, or even a month. It is done over a long period of time. Of course, it all depends on how persistent you are and how often you do it. You can do it 2 to 3 times a day. It will take you 5 minutes, but the effect will be very good. Over time, you'll become able to reach the uvula, a little hanging ball in the back of your throat. It's softer, right? Yes, it's the small piece hanging there. It feels very soft. Yes, in the back of the roof of your mouth, there is a soft palate. When I touch it with the tip of the tongue, it feels very soft and gentle. Yes, absolutely. Later, you will need to push the tongue behind it. And this is in fact what we call Khechari, a basic maxim of Khechari. But Khechari Mudra is not limited to pushing the tongue backwards. It requires time to rebuild your nervous system and activate certain mechanisms within you. Of course, if you roll the tongue backwards, you will close up that point to some extent. The tongue is kind of a branch of your major energy channel, which is unique. We have the central channel, Sushumna, a channel that runs up to the top of your head, figuratively, to the Ajna chakra, but it has a branch. This branch is our tongue. Much energy often leaks through the tongue when you talk too much. Even when we are silent, an internal dialogue forces our tongue to move. This is a sort of compensation, or karmic snares, or you can call it a trick of the matrix, to some degree. Civilizations that existed before, like Atlanteans or Lemurians, didn't talk as we do. Their communication was generally telepathic. This is a very high level. They used their tongue for tasting. Late Atlanteans began to talk the way early Aryans did, and our civilization does now. Others were at an absolutely different level. They didn't need to talk because they read information, their entire space all at once. Everything was clear. By the way, there was no telling lies because everybody knew everything. When you free your tongue so that it's able to reach the nasopharynx, the root and the tip of the tongue develop certain qualities. Actually, in the tongue there is a system of channels that run through all this. In the section of the tongue that is closest to the skull and at the tip of the tongue there are special points. When these points come into contact, the pituitary gland and all other systems are immediately activated. In fact, it already happens. However, the process is not yet very intense, because you haven't done what's needed for it. But when you practice Khechari Mudra, and now you can perform a basic Khechari, you already feel your energy spinning. Many of you feel it, which means that your consciousness is undergoing changes. It will just take a little more time. Therefore, if you achieve this, you will open up a lot of opportunities for yourselves. First, it slows down the aging processes and finally stops them altogether. These are superpowers, activating a larger percentage of your brain. We know that humans usually use only 5 to 7% of the brain. For some people, even 7% is too much, and Khechari helps us activate a much greater part of the brain. To what extent one's brain will be activated depends on the person, on their level of development, their persistence, and spiritual practice. How does the term Khechari Mudra translate? It is considered to mean walking in heaven, or being in heaven, or something very sublime within us. In Sanskrit, these words have different meanings, but they invariably point to one and the same maxim. It's linked to something very, very sublime. This is why in Lahiri Mahasaya's Kriya Yoga, Khechari Mudra is the basis. I initiate many disciples whose Khechari has reached this level into the 6 stages of Kriya. Now you understand that Khechari Mudra is not simply about bringing the tongue into contact with certain points. It also stretches nerves beneath the tongue that stimulate the medulla oblongata. This is a scientific approach. But later, at higher levels, you will need to bring certain points into contact with the tip and the base of the tongue, which by then will be prepared for it. These points are to activate certain mechanisms inside the brain, for those who've got one, as I often say. Therefore, such a walk in heaven is possible when you perform Khechari correctly, when your consciousness is ready for it. Some time later, you will naturally enter a state up to Samadhi. But it won't happen immediately, of course, because you need to be prepared for it. Your neurons need to be ready, as this is a big load. This is why we can't perform Khechari right away with an ordinary consciousness in an ordinary state. It requires thorough work, improvement, practice. It requires working off karma. Khechari won't happen immediately because one's karma is heavy, but they do their best. They practice and work off their karma, and finally they become able to perform Khechari. The same is true for the lotus position. It's not easy to sit in lotus. For some people it's hard because of their karma. But I knew some people who could sit in the lotus position at the first try. Although their karma was not very good, they had other things to work off. However, lotus is considered to be the pose of oblivion, which one must earn. You won't succeed in just one take. Khechari Mudra has 3 levels. The basic level is the easiest. At this level, you hold your tongue behind the teeth, pressed against that hump. Thus, you close up the front median meridian that nourishes organs and systems. In particular, in Taoism, there is a notion of a minor celestial circle, and there are 2 channels. The posterior and the anterior meridian channels, Jingmei and Dumei, if it makes sense to you. By and large, you should understand that this is a cycle. The channel runs from the top of the head, passes through the tongue, and ends in the perineal region. From the perineal region, another channel runs up the back and ends at the top of the head. The tongue facilitates activation of this channel. The second position of the tongue is against the palate, the roof of the mouth. 3 positions are possible: a position closest to the lips, in the middle of the palate, and in the farthest region. Each of these positions activates different types of energies or elements. There we have 3 elements: water, fire, and air. If you hold your tongue there, the elements that you are working with become active. When the tongue is at the farthest point, it activates all nadi systems, or all the meridians, because all 72,000 nadis are linked to the central channel. When you apply yourself to such serious work, you will gradually shape your consciousness, find new opportunities, and become able to perform Khechari. Just rolling your tongue back is not enough. You need to activate this mechanism, and it takes time. It is believed that it will take several years to see the effects of practicing Khechari Mudra, depending on one's level of development. Actually, several years is not much. But while on the way, you may notice the aging processes slow down, the processes of cell decay slow down, and so on. It means that you are in a process of transformation because you have more energy. In the long run, apart from certain states and spiritual experiences, the psychophysiological effect of Khechari Mudra practicing is very important, because one's energy that is dissipated, I'll explain it in a simple way. Our energy continuously leaks. It runs down and dissipates through special channels in the Manipura chakra. Simply put, you raise this energy back to your head. Why do practitioners of yoga do inverted poses? Have you ever seen them? In this way, yogis prevent energy from going down. In an inverted pose, they bring it down to the head. In other words, they try to keep it in the head by gravity, and not all of them perform Khechari, but many do. And when this energy reaches the head again, the brain transforms, as well as everything else. As a rule, the body becomes young regardless of age, or aging stops, and one can even become immortal. It means that one gets rid of any diseases, including genetic disorders, because at this moment, the matrix body activates. And those who practice Khechari Mudra at least occasionally start to feel that miracles happen to them. When they reach the third level? Yes, when they can bring the tongue to the nasopharynx. At these levels, miracles also happen, but they are not so noticeable, because a person adds more strength. The exercises help them to become stronger, and so on. Taoist masters don't perform that true Khechari. The majority hold the tip of the tongue against the palate, and in fact, it also works. When you push the tip of the tongue to the nasopharynx in Khechari Mudra, the tongue must be stretched for it. You should milk it. You may be able to reach the pituitary gland chamber with the tip of the tongue. Pushing this chamber regularly, you'll make the bone softer. There is a tissue behind which you'll feel a bone. And you will actually push through this chamber with your tongue, thus enhancing the function of the pituitary gland. It will activate all other mechanisms, pineal gland, and so on. The base of the tongue touches a certain point at the base, a cranial point, which is also linked to this system, and the mechanism starts to work. It's like you make contact to switch the light on and then switch it off. You remove the tongue, the light switches off, your systems are disconnected. I advise everyone to master it, but I also advise you not to hurry, because this requires a serious attitude.